All right, hi everyone. Thank you for coming or listening to our presentation. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about how to keep your team organized, mostly with virtual meetings, as well as some specific tools that we recommend. But to start, we're going to introduce ourselves. I'm Isabella. I'm an alum of FTC Team 9890, the Rubies, and I'm the current Vice President of University of Minnesota Robotics.
I'm Claire. I'm an alum of FTC 7152, the Robot Squad, and I am the current president of UMN Robotics.
Hi everyone, my name's Grace and I am an alum of Team 7190, the Green Girls, and I am the Director of Programs of UMN Robotics.
So UMN Robotics is a club at the University of Minnesota that participates in both competitive and non-competitive robotics programs. We have several different projects going on at any given time. Additionally, we also do campus outreach and outreach to K-12 students like yourselves. So we're going to move on to some general tips and tricks for your guys' teams.
So to start out, we're recommending that every team this year use a task tracking tool, even if you have not in the past. And so I listed a few different common tools that I've seen teams use. Trello is what's pictured on the right here, and I also know a lot of professionals who use it. But essentially, as you can see, it's kind of organized in columns, and then each little box is a specific task. And then you can assign it to a specific sub-team through a color and assign it to a specific person, as you can see in people's pictures in the bottom right corners. I know for our team, this was kind of too much to upkeep. It definitely depends on what people have time for, and the best task management tool is something that everyone will use. If people aren't going to be using the tool that you pick, it doesn't do very much good to have it. So some simpler options, if you think this might be too much to upkeep, are something like Google Keep, which is just part of the Google suite that allows you to make and share just simple checkbox lists. You could do one of those for each sub-team, which is something our team did for a while, or using just kind of a Google Sheet as a spreadsheet to organize your tasks. So whatever works for your team, but just making sure you have a system that everyone will use.
So long-term planning is going to be very important this year as well. One good tool for that is Google Calendar to try to organize your meetings. I know you have a built-in Zoom function in Google Calendar to organize that. You also need to be thinking about your goals for the next month, 2 months, etc., to try to get your smaller steps to get there. It's going to be really important to be thinking ahead this year. One tool that you could use is a Gantt chart, as you can see on the right side of the screen. This is a tool that's used in industry a lot to try to see what you need to get done when to meet your goals.
Another thing that's going to be important this year is team communication, because you guys are not all going to be in the same room together. It's important to make sure you stay connected virtually. Two great tools to do this are Slack and GroupMe. Slack is used in the industry a lot. I know I used it during my internship this summer, and it's great because you can create separate rooms for teams like programming and build, so that everyone on the programming team doesn't have to look at everything on the build team if they don't want to. And then there's also team rooms too, where everyone can communicate within the same room. Another important thing that you could do is weekly check-ins, where you talk about what everyone's action items were and what their progress is. This is much like a stand-up, which is a term used in software engineering to mean weekly or daily meetings where the team will get together and go over what things they got done, what things went well, and what problems they ran into, so that the rest of the team can help them overcome their problems together. This is just a really great way to stay connected, even if you're not doing it daily or weekly, but maybe bi-weekly as well.
So now we'll go into some more specifics about managing an FTC team. So obviously engineering notebooks have always been a really important tool, and they're going to be even more so this year. I'm sure a lot of you have done an online notebook before, but we'll go over some tips anyways. A lot of people use Google Docs or Office 365 for more advanced features. I know my team used Google Drive and then had different documents for each of our notebook sections. You can also use Google Photos to keep track of images and what was done on what date. Using the comments and chat in the Google Doc to communicate can be important. So if a member missed a meeting and needs some clarification, they can ask what they're missing. And notebooks will be a very important tool this year to try to make sure everybody knows what everybody's doing at any given time. On the right side of the screen, you can see an example of a outreach section. I believe this team just used a format that Google Drive or Google Docs already had. The link below will bring you to more of an example.
Outreach is still going to be really important this year, but it's going to look different because you can't meet in large groups, obviously, because of the pandemic. So a couple ways to still outreach to people are having virtual mentoring / like advice meetings. I know my team did this even when there wasn't restrictions on how many people could meet at the same time. And these worked really well for mentoring teams in another state or even another city. And it still helped to show them like outreach pages and engineering notebook pages or robot designs over video chat. And this worked really well and still gave a good amount of advice. Another great way to do this is professional outreach using design reviews and info sessions. What you can do is have your robot or engineering notebook in the frame and present to these professionals to get feedback. And judges really like to see that you reach out to the professional community as well as your peer robotics community. So that's a great way to do it. Another thing that you can do is create online resources for other teams. On the right here is a picture of my team's outreach event for creating videos that we made at the end of our senior season to pass on our knowledge to other teams. So if you can find those are good examples of what you could do. And lastly, you could do events like this one where you present to other teams using Zoom. Like I said before, presentations are a great way to do some outreach, but you could also practice your presentations that you would usually give to a panel of judges virtually. So FTC or High Tech Kids website mentions that they'll be using Discord this year to conduct judging interviews. So it's really important that your team becomes familiar with the tools in Discord and practices using them in order to make transitions really smooth and be able to make sure that you have the right things ready at the right time so that judging runs as smoothly as it would in person. A way to do this is to present to other teams or professionals and get feedback, or you could record yourselves and watch as a team and look for things to improve. I know my team did this when we were in person, and this was really helpful to see things that you wouldn't notice just giving the presentation yourself, like extra ums or awkward pauses.
For sure. Talking about design and build for a second, CAD is going to be an extra helpful tool this year. Obviously, it's helpful in a normal season, but especially when you're not able to meet together necessarily to build the robot, or especially not more than 1 or 2 people are working on the robot at a time. This can help to make sure everyone is on the same page. I know for our team, even in normal seasons, there was a really big difference in how smoothly build went when we had our entire robot CAD'd and had done design reviews on it versus when we had just maybe specific parts CAD and we're trying to figure out how to put it all together on our own. It's definitely more difficult. We mentioned specifically the tools of GrabCAD or Onshape. So GrabCAD is sort of more like GitHub, where you can use it with SolidWorks or Creo or whatever CAD software your team likes to use on your individual laptops or desktops, I guess, and then kind of upload it to the cloud and everyone can kind of push and pull new changes. You're also able to do commit comments on it, sort of like in GitHub, where everyone on the team can see the comments that people left about what they changed. And you're also able to tag specific people in these comments. So I know our team sometimes used that when we wanted to reference, say, a specific professional mentor that was 3D printing our parts to kind of ask them, oh, does this look like it makes sense for 3D printing? Do you have any changes? Things like that. And that's a really great way to get quick feedback from professionals on your design instead of having to necessarily wait and send it over email or something like that. Onshape is more of kind of a cloud-based CAD service. Basically, sort of think of a Google Doc, except it's all on the cloud. Here's an image in the lower right corner of that. And so some teams also use that for communication and collaboration virtually on the same CAD files. We also mentioned the idea of design reviews and check-ins as a group over Zoom. So this can be a great way if everyone's working on different subsystems or parts of your robot remotely, then you can all kind of check in, take some time over Zoom to look at the whole thing and get everyone on the team's feedback. And you can also invite professional mentors to these That way, before you even start manufacturing parts or building your robot, you're all on the same page of exactly what you want it to look like and have troubleshot a lot of the problems.
Isabella mentioned GitHub as a great way to manage your code this season, and she's absolutely right. GitHub is an online tool that you can use as a backup or manager of your code repository versions. Programmers can work on the same file without having to run into major conflicts by creating branches and downloading these branches to edit on your computers offline. And then once you have a working version of your code, you can then push your branch up to GitHub and merge it into the main branch. And this way, your team can work on the same file at the same time and be able to edit it and improve it constantly instead of having to pass around one computer. Pushing your code up to GitHub also gives you a backup that can be downloaded and tested by anyone on your team. So you can have your programmer in one place writing code and your builder in another place downloading and testing the code with that robot. At the bottom here is a link to how to use GitHub because it can be a little bit daunting at first for people who haven't seen it. So there's a resource for you to look at.
Feel free to contact us even after this outreach session. Our contact info is here. We'll be more than happy to try to answer any questions you have. Thank you for listening.